You know the number one mistake I see smart, capable people make? It isn't a lack of talent, it isn't a lack of resources, it's a belief system. They think safety and numbers equals success. But I'm here to tell you that the crowd isn't going where you want to go. Here's the thing about following the crowd. It is literally mathematically designed to keep you average. Look, I get it. Going against the grain feels scary. It feels visceral. Everyone around you is doing the same thing, taking the same path, making the same choices. And your brain is screaming, stay with the tribe, safety and numbers. But here's what nobody talks about. If everyone is walking in the same direction, where do they end up? At the exact same destination. And that destination isn't success. It's called the mean. It's the middle of the bell curve. It is, by definition, average. You have to ask yourself, if you do exactly what the majority does, how can you mathematically expect a result different from the majority? You can't. So why do we do it? Why do we keep following the herd even when we know deep down it's leading us off a cliff? To understand this, we have to look at the hardware running your brain. We need to talk about the amygdala. For 200,000 years of human history, being cast out of the tribe didn't just mean you were lonely, it meant you died. If you were alone in the savannah and you saw a predator, you were lunch. If you were with the group, you stood a chance. Your brain evolved a very specific mechanism: social pain. Neuroscience has actually shown that the area of the brain that lights up when you are socially rejected is the exact same area that lights up when you experience physical pain. Think about that. When you try to start a business or launch a channel or present a new idea, and you feel that tightness in your chest, that fear of what will they say, that is your biology trying to save you from a saber-toothed tiger that no longer exists. Your survival instinct is wired to seek approval, to fit in, to avoid being the odd one out. But here is the critical distinction that defines the modern era. Survival and success are two completely different games. Survival keeps you safe. It keeps you breathing. But success? Success requires risk. Success requires suppressing that 200,000-year-old alarm bell in your head. Now, let's look at the logic of the crowd. I mentioned earlier that the crowd isn't going where you want to go, but it's worse than that. The crowd usually has no idea where it's going at all. I want you to imagine a game of telephone. You played this as a kid. One person whispers a message to the next, and by the time it reaches the 20th person, the dog is barking has turned into the bog is dark. Society operates the same way. The crowd isn't made up of experts. It isn't made up of people doing first principles thinking. It's made up of people following other people who are following other people who are following other people. When you copy your competitors or your friends or your parents' advice, you are usually copying a copy of a copy. You are making decisions based on diluted information that might have been true 20 years ago but is obsolete today. I call this derived thinking. It's looking sideways to see what everyone else is doing to determine what is true. Contrast that with first principles thinking. This is what Elon Musk used to revolutionize the space industry. The crowd said, "Rockets are too expensive. You can't build a private space company." That was the message passed down the telephone line. Musk didn't listen to the crowd. He looked at the physics. He asked, what is a rocket made of? Aluminum, titanium, copper. What is the spot market value of those materials? He realized the materials were only 2% of the cost. The rest was inefficiency. He didn't follow the space industry playbook, he rewrote it. But if he had listened to the safety and numbers logic, SpaceX would not exist. But here's the crazy part about people like Musk or Steve Jobs or the Wright brothers. Today we call them geniuses. We put their faces on magazine covers, but do you know what they were called at the beginning? Crazy, dangerous, delusional. The Wright brothers didn't follow aviation experts. In fact, the experts of the time had mathematical proof that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. When the Wright brothers were testing their machine, they weren't applauded. They were ignored and mocked. Steve Jobs didn't listen to market research. There is a famous story where a reporter asked him how much market research he did for the iPad. He said, "None. It's not the consumer's job to know what they want." Every single breakthrough in history came from someone who stood alone first. See, the crowd has this toxic relationship with innovation. They reject it, they mock it, and then, once it's proven to work, suddenly everyone claims they saw it coming. Oh yeah, I always knew crypto was the future. I always knew the internet would blow up. Lies. They were standing in the safety of the crowd, throwing stones at the people building the future. So we established that standing alone is uncomfortable. But let me ask you a question that might change how you view fear. What is riskier? Is it riskier to try something new, potentially fail, learn, and try again? Or is it riskier to do exactly what everyone else does, guaranteeing with 100% certainty that you will get exactly what everyone else gets? I call this the silent risk. The loud risk is starting the business and going broke. Everyone sees it. It's embarrassing. But the silent risk is staying in the job you hate for 40 years. It's never writing the book. It's never filming the video. The silent risk is waking up at 80 years old, looking back, and realizing you lived someone else's life because you were too afraid to live your own. The people complaining about their results are the same people following the crowd. They're doing what their friends do, what their family expects, what society says is smart. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But the people getting different results, they're doing different things. They're standing alone. Now, I'm not saying be different just to be different. That's just being a contrarian. That's rebellion without purpose. I'm talking about thinking for yourself. Here is the practical application. Next time you make a decision, whether it's about your career, your content strategy, or your money, pause. Engage the why. When everyone zigs, pause and ask, why are we zigging? When everyone follows the same viral trend, ask, what happens when this trend dies? What if there's a better way? When everyone believes the same thing, ask, what if they're wrong? Most of the time, they are wrong. When you stop following and start thinking, everything changes. You start seeing opportunities others miss because they are too busy looking at each other. You start solving problems others ignore. You start creating value others can't imagine. And that is when success finds you. Because success doesn't come from doing what everyone else does. It comes from doing what everyone else won't do. The question is, are you brave enough to stand alone? Because I promise you this, standing alone today means leading the crowd tomorrow. And the crowd? They'll follow you next. But by then, you'll be onto something new, something they haven't thought of yet. Something that requires standing alone. Again. That's the cycle of innovation. That's the path of success. The real question isn't whether you should follow the crowd or stand alone. The real question is, how long are you willing to stay average? Because average is safe. Average is comfortable. Average is what happens when you follow the crowd. But extraordinary? That only happens when you're brave enough to walk your own path, even if you have to walk it alone.